Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, and today we are going to talk about books in a couple different ways and get a question about green fallowing. So let's do it. All right, so I hope everyone had a lovely Monday. It's getting dark here at like 6 p.m., so although it was indeed a lovely Monday for us, it was short. And where my afternoons are usually spent on soccer and or kiddo stuff with the crashing daylight, they are often spent pacing around the house while the kids scream and play around me. My wife loves it. I did clear out the greenhouse, as I do every year, to clean it up, and now that has turned into a temporary soccer house for the winter, which is fun. If I can get some lights in there, that will be good to go. Anyway, I do try to get some good reading done at this time of year. The last few years, I feel like I've read a lot of science papers, just reading nothing but research papers. But there are a lot of really good books coming out right now that I want to get to, and that'll be fun to share. But I thought, especially with gift buying season upon us, I would dedicate today's episode to farm books I think every grower needs. So in the first segment, I thought I would talk about what my favorite farm books are. And in the third segment, I'll share the experience of writing a farm book and some misconceptions maybe about how profitable or not profitable of a thing it is to do. So I guess today's episode is kind of a book and green fallow sandwich. Sounds delicious. All right, so I am a big book fan, as is my wife, and when we were living off-grid for many years, reading was basically all we did for entertainment, especially in the winter. That said, I haven't read every farm book there is, and I have certainly forgotten about some of the ones I did read and enjoy, so feel free to let me know which books you think deserve a shout-out that I miss. First, I'm going to start with essentials, and then I'll do some nerd essentials after that. Almost all of these are specifically for market farmers, not for livestock farmers. So although we have raised all sorts of livestock over the years, and I've read all sorts of livestock books, I haven't read a livestock book in many, many years, and it would feel disingenuous to make recommendations. So this will strictly be stuff I think helps market gardeners, but some of it could be, applicable to any sort of farm business. Anyway, my essentials list goes like this, and they will be linked in the show notes. I should say none of these are in a particular order, though maybe the first one is the first one, and then everything else is not necessarily in an order. It's just whatever order it hit my brain. And I obviously did not include my own book, but I'll talk about that at the end. Obviously, when you pick that up from no-tillgrowers.com, though, it helps to support our work, so in that way, it's essential. Anyway, number one, The Organic Farmer's Business Handbook by Richard Wiswall. If you are starting a farm, you are starting a business. And if you know nothing about farm businesses, you should start with this book. I've mentioned it thrice now in the short existence of this show, so that should tell you something. Number two, and for anybody not watching on YouTube, I'm literally holding these up, so that's probably what that sound is. But number two, The No-Till Organic Vegetable Farm by Daniel Mays. If you are in the North especially, but no matter where you live, this book is widely applicable. The cover crop stuff is really helpful, but he also goes into planning and record keeping and a bunch of other practical and necessary farm things. Great book to have. Number three, or 3 and 4 if you want to say it that way, is The Lean Farm and also The Lean Micro Farm by Ben Hartman. Both of these books are exceedingly helpful in applying the lean system of manufacturing, thinking basically like the Toyota production system to ecological farming. That may not sound super sexy, but both books are very well done. The Lean Micro Farm is especially good for anyone working with a very small space, like a large backyard. You do not have to, implement everything that has to do with the lean system, but you can get a lot of great ideas based on that system for farming. Very cool. Number 4, The New Organic Grower by Elliot Coleman is the first book I ever owned on farming, and the last edition, which I think is the 30th anniversary. It feels like an essential piece of the farm library to me, as does the Winter Harvest Handbook, another great one by Elliot Coleman. 5, The Market Gardener by J.M. Fortier is a great book too, and it really builds on what Elliot laid out in The New Organic Grower, and also applies a lot of the financial side to things and the production side, which again is critical to making this business of market gardening or growing food work. 6, and this is one I feel like does not get enough attention, is The Greenhouse and Hoop House Grower's Guide by Andrew Mefford, who is the editor at Growing for Market magazine, a magazine subscription you should have. Anyway, this is a must for anyone with a high tunnel or wanting to grow undercover at all. Absolutely excellent book. I give this one with a huge recommendation. I still reference this book all the time. One I don't have a physical copy of because it's an ebook is Chris Newman wrote an excellent ebook called First Generation Farming that challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom on small scale farms and how they should operate and how they are not working a lot of times. I think it's wonderful and does not get talked about enough. Now, I want to add a few nerd essentials real quick. The Teaming With series, so like teaming with nutrients, teaming with fungi, teaming with microbes. These are all really, really good. Jeff Lowenfels, the author, does a really good job of like laying out all of these very complicated ideas in a very digestible manner, in a way that most people can understand them and appreciate how these things function in our soil. One I could not find my copy of is a Soil Owner's Manual by John Sticka. That's a great one. That's one everybody should own. Some more honorable mentions in the terms of the Nerd Essentials is I also really liked The Ecological Farm by Helen Attow. Just this one here. Helen is super awesome. She goes into a ton of detail in this book on her production system, and they kept really good records and have a lot of data to back up what does and doesn't work in terms of soil management. So very cool stuff. No-Till Intensive Vegetable Culture by Brian O'Hara. Another great one. One of the things that I really took away from this is he adds nutrients to his compost to address deficiencies he's seeing in the field. So basically like using the compost microbes to make those nutrients available before he puts it on the field, instead of just applying rock amendments to the field, which I think is a very cool idea. The Jadam books are very cool. The Jadam microorganism solution that I mentioned in the potato video yesterday, that comes from these books and from this idea, and I love it. I think there's lots of really cool ideas here. And maybe the last book I'll mention is this one by Nigel Palmer, which is probably the best book that breaks down like Korean natural farming amendments and how to use them and how to make them. That's in English, but there's lots of cool, useful stuff in this book as well. And one that I think is really great. I think everybody should have this book and all of those mentioned there. There's so many more I could mention. Like Charles Dowding has written several good books for gardening scale. Pam Dawling's 2 books. She's got another edition of Sustainable Market Farming coming out soon, which I'll discuss at some point. Another really good one. Also, I will talk about my book at the end. But one last shout out to Dan Brisebois' forthcoming book, The Seed Farmer, which is going to be an essential book for market farmers interested in seed saving or specifically seed selling and how you can work that into like a market garden scale. Very cool stuff. And when you get it from no-tillgrows.com, that goes to supporting our work as well. Nice. Again, I will painstakingly link all of those in the show notes while I curse this decision for a podcast idea so that you can easily find them. Anyway, let me know what books are your essential bookshelf books for farmers. And up next, we'll talk green fallowing. Couldn't be a more natural transition than that. BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seeding to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. Their same-day shipping can help keep your planting schedules on track when the unexpected happens. They're here to help you grow good food. Turning to Johnny's means you can plant high-quality, trial-proven varieties with confidence and know that their expert staff is ready to help with first-hand knowledge, because they've grown them themselves. Learn more at johnnyseeds.com. All right. Back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast and want to support it, you can do so at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to those Patreon questions. Today's question comes from Patreon member and friend and past employee of our farm, Mr. Nate Merkel, who writes, quote, "I would love to hear your thoughts on a green fallow year or more, or continuous cover cropping. There's a plot I'm thinking I'd like to open up for use in some amount of time in the future. Any perennial cover cropping solutions? Succession cover cropping or simply letting a cover crop go to seed? What do you think?" End quote. Great to hear from Nate and fun question. So I've actually had the opportunity to cover crop for a full year a few times now. And if I could take one plot out of production in my garden every single season and just cover crop that for a year straight, I would absolutely do that. Now, how you would do it depends a bit on the time of year that you want to take it out of production and on your climate. My experience is all in Central Kentucky Zone 6B. So this is one way it could look. a plot is taken out of production in the late summer, and a winter hardy cover crop of cereal rye, vetch, and crimson clover are sown. If I'm in zone 7B or above, I'm probably skipping the vetch in favor of Austrian winter pea because vetch can be hard to kill in southern climates. Anyway, in the early summer of the next year, I'm broadcasting sorghum Sudan grass and a legume of some sort like cowpeas over top of the winter cover crop right before I terminate it. Preferably, you would have primed that seed to get it ready to germinate by soaking it in a compost extract or tea overnight, then quickly drying it. Then you sow it and then smash the winter cover crop down when it's tall and ready in what we call milk stage, when a white liquid can be squeezed from the seed heads of the cereal rye. But more on cover crop terminations specifically another time, or feel free to watch any of our cover cropping videos for more info on that. Then, so long as the moisture is there, that summer cover crop should establish well, and you can either terminate it in the late summer in preparation for garlic, that's what I did at least, or sow a cover crop into that. If you sowed a winter-killed cover crop like field peas into that late summer cover crop, similar to how you sowed the sorghum Sudan grass, you could essentially have a nice, healthy, mulched garden ready to plant in the spring. As for perennial cover croppings, we will talk about this another time. My experience has not been super encouraging that there is a green crop that will allow you to plant directly into it, such as a dwarf white clover. But Eric Nordell has pointed me towards someone using this idea successfully, which I still intend to explore at some point. So I'll get to that later. As for letting stuff go to seed, I generally say don't do that, only because it could be a weed issue later on. It's not, there are ways in which you could do it, but I'm generally not going to suggest it. I would rather pick exactly what's growing all the time than kind of leave it up to chance. So for now, Nate, I hope that's a little bit helpful. I love the idea of cover cropping plots for an entire year or more if you have the space for it. Green fallowing like that is very ancient and proven technique to replenish the soil, and I see no issues with giving it a shot. So thanks, Nate, and thanks to all of our amazing Patreon members. This show literally can't exist without you, and we really appreciate it. All right, when we come back, I demystify the farm book writing experience. Be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Farmhand. I don't know about you, but I got into farming to be in the field growing food for my community, not creating elaborate pack lists, not writing newsletters or responding to emails, not designing and maintaining web stores, and etc. And I especially don't enjoy doing those things after an already full and fulfilling day of growing food. Actually, if I spent less time on my phone and behind the computer, that would be great. If only there were a solution for that. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand is the only all-in-one virtual assistant built by and for farmers. With one single platform, Farmhand enables you to offload your administrative tasks, send and manage communications, and sell more to your customers. Farmhand saves growers an average of 6 hours of administrative load each week. That's 6 hours so you can get back into the field, spend more time with friends or family, or have a life outside of the farm, which is actually a thing. Think about it. What would you do with an extra 6 hours a week? Sign up for a free trial with the link in the show notes, because now is the best time to dial in those systems for the next growing season. Follow the Farmhand link in the show notes to learn more. All right, back to the show. All right, so as a writer, I have long been fascinated by books in the publishing industry. Every writer dreams of publishing a book, pretty much. I'm assuming most every writer does, but I know that at least for me, I held many misconceptions about how farm books work. As you know, I wrote a farm book back in 2019, 2020 that was published in the summer of 2021 by Chelsea Green called The Living Soil Handbook. It's about soccer. Okay, it's not. It's about ecological market gardening, but let me take you through the process of getting that thing published. Pretty much every published book follows a similar path. So whether you're just curious or you're interested in publishing yourself, this could be fun. First, a query letter is written. This is a letter that pitches the book that you are wanting to write. It's basically a letter that says, this is why I chose you as the publisher, here's what the book is about, and here's who I am, in 3 or so short, succinct paragraphs. There's an absolute art, if not science, to writing these letters, and I think it's actually a really great exercise, no matter what kind of writer you are, to practice writing these query letters. It really helps you to flesh out what you're trying to do. For most books, like fiction, you would send those letters to an agent. not a publisher. Most publishers do not accept query letters, but for trade publications like farm books, you can generally send the queries straight to the publisher. If an editor likes your query, they will have you put together a proposal. Now, a proposal is a very intensive process. Every publisher will have their own criteria, but generally they will want a basic outline, a detailed outline, so an outline with a sentence or two describing each section, a sample chapter or two, a bio, a marketing plan, a graphics or illustration plan with examples, and potentially more things. You will be tasked with putting all of this together on your own as the author, but the editor will help refine it and make it presentable to the rest of the team at the publisher. The proposal can take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months to get together. Mine, I think, probably took around a month or so, if I recall correctly. Then that will be presented to the entire publishing staff, and they will decide if the project is worth pursuing. So to be clear, at this point, you've already put a bunch of work into the book, and it may still not get published. In fact, very few books actually make it to the proposal process, and of those, even fewer get published. Especially now, where so few people read books, getting published is exceedingly difficult. Now, if they accept your book, you will sign a contract, which includes all of the details about royalties and deadlines and ownership. You will also likely be offered a small advance. For myself, I was offered $5,000 broken up into 3 payments that correspond with different parts of the production timeline, like turning in the first draft and the final draft. This is what's called a recoupable advance, meaning I cannot make any royalties until that money is recouped by the publisher through book sales. Keep in mind that most books, and especially many farm books, do not ever recoup, meaning they never sell enough to pay back the advance, and thus the author never sees another penny from the publisher. And a farm book is going to take you at least 1,000 hours of labor to produce. So that's what I estimate solely for writing and editing, not including the proposal process, not including the pitch, none of that stuff. Which effectively means writing a book is a $5 an hour job unless you recoup. Then, of course, that dollar amount goes up slowly. However, keep in mind your percentage is something like 10 or 12% of what the publisher makes per book, which can be like $1.20 or $1.40 per book. That percentage does go up oftentimes in the contract as you sell more copies. So like there may be a percentage jump at like 20,000 copies or whatever. But either way, it's not going to be very much money. Your royalties are generally paid every 6 months as well. So if you did recoup your advance, it may not be for a whole year before you get your first royalty check. Selling your own copies is how you can earn the most money, though of course you have to buy those copies. So with that in mind, the best way to support a farm author is to buy it directly from them. That said, a lot of farm authors do not do this. The marketing side of writing a book often gets pushed to the bottom of the list, while it should really be at the top of the list before writing your book. Writing a book is effectively starting a small business, and you shouldn't put a ton of money and time and work into a small business that you yourself have no marketing apparatus to sell it. The way I set up the Living Soil Handbook is that I sell it all through no-till growers and do not collect any money on those sales. Like I get my 144 or whatever in royalties, but the rest of it goes to keeping this company going and growing because no-till growers and this work is important to me. And I believe it is important to the planet, to food, to people's health, all of those things. But all of that to say, writing a farm book can be a great thing to do for the farming community, but there are certainly better, more profitable enterprises one can embark on, like just growing food. So that's a good one. But I love my farm books, and I really appreciate the work that the authors put into them. So I do hope you will continue to support farm authors because it is not the money-making enterprise I think some people think it is. And I have learned a ton from farm books. Also, there's just no way to include the requisite detail needed to produce food profitably or successfully in a YouTube video or on a podcast. The enterprise budget info, the exact spacing and seeder adjustments, all the tiny details are best in a book. So let me know if you have any publishing questions or writing questions or book questions or farming questions, especially you Patreon members. Otherwise, that's it for me today. Huge thank you to Willie Breeding for the theme music and the team at No-Till Growers. Thank you to everyone who has been listening, engaging, and subscribing and following, and absolutely, especially those who have signed up to be Patreon members at patreon.com/no-till-growers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or if you just sign up in the month of November, even at $2, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Stacy Moorman, Bill King, Byron Green, Chris Yates and Steven Smith. This is our weekly crew, or our almost weekly crew. And so they get a shout out every week. And they are, they're going to be our party crashers. No matter what your story is, whether it's a film noir or a post-apocalyptic, they're going to crash it. They're just going to show up and wreak havoc. And we'll call them the weeklies. Yep. All right. Feel free to join the weeklies. They are always looking for new members. Otherwise, thanks to whoever supports us in whatever way that you can. Thank you for watching or listening. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.